And now back to our top story today, sanctions on Moscow as the European Union responds to Donald Trump's pressure to wean Europe of Russian energy. Our guest is Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of Brussels Freedom Hub. Roland, good evening, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We just learned that Estonia was compelled to call for Article 4 negotiations, consultations with NATO partners after Russia again violated the airspace of a NATO country after Poland last week. Does that in any way, is this the Moscow's response to sanctions and greater pressure from the West?
Well, these incursions serve several purposes. First of all, I think it's a test of the reaction time and the effectiveness of NATO's air defenses. But it's also political signaling. And part of this is, yes, we don't care about your sanctions. But, ask Russian economists, even in the Russian government. That's a different story. But the other signal that Russia wants to send here is we're not only caring about Ukraine, we're also capable of attacking elsewhere. And that concerns other countries in Eastern Europe, and it concerns NATO member states. So I think it's quite a clear, aggressive signaling. And I think Putin hopes to scare at least part of our population into some kind of appeasement. And we have to take care that this doesn't work.
Right. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said, last week Poland, today Estonia. Russia is once again provoking and demonstrating its lack of interest in peace. Poland declares solidarity with Estonia and strongly condemns Russia's violations of its airspace. Do you think these consultations, these NATO Article 4 consultations are necessary, or is it going too far because we will soon have inflation of such consultations without actual impact?
Well, the consultations will end up in strengthening the eastern flank because that is what is initiated in these meetings. A drone wall on the eastern flank, composed of sensors, radars, air defense missiles, and of course guns. I mean, all this will have to be built up as quickly as possible, and it will still take some time. But that is why consultations are necessary. And so I think that's the first thing NATO can do and should do here.
At the risk of sounding naive, I'm going to ask you this. Is Russia actually doing NATO and the eastern flank a favor by staging these things? Because, for example, with the drones invading Poland, everyone realized that actually defenses against drone incursions are not good enough. So now everyone is learning from the Ukrainians how to counter that. Now we have this other incursion. So each time, as you said, NATO is responding with better defenses. So at the end of this game, why is Putin, what's in it for Putin?
Well, that's an excellent question, Adam. I've been wondering for a while why Putin doesn't strategically change tack and give some kind of compromise or signal some kind of softness, because that would really make him popular with the appeasement crowd in NATO countries. But no, he is apparently convinced that NATO can be scared into submission, that democracies are weak, and that in the end, they will shy away from his posturing and his aggressive moves.
Yes, it was interesting.
It is up to us.
Pardon me for interrupting you, but it was interesting to notice that Hungary, that normally speaks for Moscow in Europe, condemned the incursion into Polish territory. So, in fact, Putin is consolidating, you could argue, NATO. And also we see the displeasure of Donald Trump, increasing displeasure.
Yeah, Donald Trump's reactions are a different story.
Okay.
From here we go, which could mean anything, to maybe it was a mistake, to yesterday in Britain, I'm disappointed, Putin let me down. I mean, we've heard each and every version of a reaction from Trump in the last couple of weeks. But Hungary, indeed, interesting case. I would not discount a Hungarian attempt to actually signal that they indeed can practice some kind of solidarity with allies. And don't forget that part of the Polish political spectrum is still very, very friendly with the Hungarian government. So I think that's a particular case. And the other Hungarian element here is actually the interesting fact that President Trump, with his demands that that Europe stops buying Russian gas and oil, is flying in the face of the policy of the Hungarian government, which is to prolong dependency on Russian energy exports as long as possible. So, whether there was some communication between Washington and Budapest, or whether there is some kind of preemptive obedience by Viktor Orban in this question of current energy dependency and general relations with Russia, we don't know. But indeed, something seems to be moving. But whether that's a strategic shift in Hungarian policy is a completely different question. We don't know.
We don't know. What we do know is that President Trump last week asked the Europeans to speed up sanctions and try to limit their dependence on Russian energy, and also to move on China and India. Well, the Europeans didn't exactly do that. However, Ursula von der Leyen said today, announcing the new sanctions, we want Russia to leave the battlefield and come to the negotiation table. And this is the way to give peace a real chance. Roland, what I want to ask you, this is the 19th package. Why couldn't they get it the 5th time round?
Well, look, a sanctions package has to be agreed by all member states. It's as simple as that. And again, I think that Hungarian and Slovak agreement, which is now on the horizon. I mean, I don't think we have the package is not formally decided yet, but it will be in the next couple of days. So to get Slovak and Hungarian agreement is big progress, and we haven't gotten that in the past. There were other countries, Austria, Cyprus, other member states of the European Union that were rather careful about agreeing to all the sanctions. So the strategy here is clearly turning up the heat slowly and working towards the moment where the straw breaks the camel's back. In other words, where small step sanctions improvements actually have a decisive impact on the Russian economy. We're not there yet, but we're seeing some very, very good results, because indeed inflation is about 20% in Russia now. And Russia's finances are dwindling very, very quickly.
Roland,
that will have a direct impact.
We're running out of time, but just to sum up this week's events, do you believe that Europe and America are better aligned now when it comes to the war in Ukraine than only a few months ago?
It's very difficult to say, because we never know exactly where Donald Trump stands. I think the most important takeaway from these past weeks is Europeans have to care less about every comma and every side sentence, offhand remark of President Trump, and do much more themselves, work much more with the Ukrainians in enabling them to produce weapons, in exporting European weapons to Ukraine, in buying weapons in the US and giving them to the Ukrainians. This is what the Europeans have to do, no matter what the United States government does, says, thinks at a given moment.
Roland Freudenstein, co-founder Brussels Freedom Hub, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And this is all we've got for you in this edition of World News Tonight. But stay on with us for more news and analysis.